Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. The first time it's ever happened, 500 episodes, it happens on 501. Look at that. So now joining us, we have Opposition Senator and member of the Joint Select Committee on National Security, Jayanti Lutchmedial, who has, well, not only did we have the Regional Crime Symposium, we also had a Joint Select Committee meeting just this week, just yesterday. So there's a lot to get into. Good morning, Senator.
Hi, yes, good morning. Quite a bit this week in the conversations, national conversation on crime and the criminal justice system.
Well, so it was a 2-day symposium, and the CARICOM leaders, they published a resolution. It's a long list. I'm not entirely sure if it's well structured, but maybe that's to be somewhat forgiven because it was a now for now thing. Reading it, it has some interesting things in it, a lot of things that sound nice on paper. I'm not entirely sure how to assess it with regards to how it will be implemented. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, my first thoughts on the whole symposium and having seen the resolution was really that if the theme of the entire event was crime as a public health crisis, I expected to see some link to public health and public health initiatives that may be able to assist with crime. And I say that now, most people don't see the connection between public health and crime, and that's a communication issue on the part of the government, one of their many communication issues. The way I interpret it, and the public health perspective I see when it comes to crime, is that when you look at, cause and effect, our underlying failure to address mental health issues, proper guidance, counseling, and assessment of at-risk youth, and the provision of services to them and so on at the level of the public health and education system. I thought that I think that the crime and the cause of crime and the underlying root causes of crime is really a combination of public health and education crisis. So I would have thought I would have seen some resolutions at the end of a conference, which is normal, that would reflect the theme and would really address public health and education, by extension, initiatives that would tackle crime. The second thing is that the main thing that stood out about the resolution was that we're going to ban assault rifles. Assault weapons. Now, assault weapons, because I actually looked it up, and the terminology is kind of applied very broadly.
Yes.
Definition, assault weapons are particular, those semi-automatic type weapons, and where you have magazines that can detach and all of that. Mm-hmm. I didn't hear anybody, and maybe I missed it because I wasn't there, but I don't know that I heard anybody give a statistic. Let's say, for example, of our 600 and something murders last year, how many of them were committed using assault-style weapons? How much of a problem really is assault? How is banning the assault weapons really going to arrest the crime problem? If that's the resolution coming out of 2 days of a fancy symposium held at the Hyatt, plus, an evening of entertainment thereafter for the CARICOM attendees and so on. So that's two. My third thought on all of this is that having a legal ban on assault-style weapons, whether it's the sale of those weapons, being able to import them, whatever it is, how does that affect, or how is that going to address the crime situation when I don't think anybody, and maybe if they do, maybe 1 or 2 murders might be committed using legal firearms. So you banning it whilst all the illegal guns are still coming into the country isn't going to help. We don't have a problem with, this is not America. And I don't know how to drill that into the heads of the people who are decision makers. The people who are I think are really living on Mars are the people who sit down and somehow watch CNN or BBC or something like that and think that they can simply adopt these solutions that are being put forward there and bring it here. In America, you have mass murders being committed with assault-style weapons because people can walk into Walmart and purchase one in many states of the United States.
So do you think that perhaps that particular ban of which has been touted is to strengthen CARICOM's position in terms of international help or even international funding. Listen, we have this ban, but we're still getting assault rifles, of which we do not manufacture, flooding within our, our states, our islands. Do you think that's to strengthen their position for their argument?
I don't know, because at the end of the day, how you strengthen, look, you want help to eliminate the inflow of guns into your country, you ask for help in terms of strengthening your border protection. You ask for help in terms of countries perhaps intervening to ensure that the foreign companies that sell us boats and so on will have proper contracts for services, so that all the boats aren't parked up in Shagaramas not patrolling the borders. You could perhaps ask for help in terms of ensuring that we get working scanners on the port. This whole thing about we want to sue American gun manufacturers because, they manufacturing the guns that end up here. Well, why are they ending up in here and ending up in the hands of criminals? It's because you have failed on border protection. Have failed on border protection.
Can we just, for a moment, link this back to our criminal justice system, just for a moment? And because my co-host and I this morning was speaking about the DPP as well. I think it was just mentioned prior to this conversation about the GSC hearing yesterday with the DPP, linking this crime symposium back to the issues with our criminal justice system and our judicial system. Any thoughts were expressed yesterday by the DPP over the conversations from the symposium?
No, he just said that he wasn't there. He didn't elaborate on that, and I don't think he was questioned on that. What he did say, however, and he did identify, that serious resourcing constraints being faced and serious management issues in terms of, look, the DPP is a lawyer. The DPP is a legal mind. He's the person that has to sit down and assess evidence and make determinations about, whether people should be charged or not. And, simple things that ought to be done by other professionals simply aren't done because those people are not there. They don't have a proper HR function within the office of the DPP. Now, when you hear that, you can kind of understand why they have such a problem with resources. I learned yesterday that of the 58 people on staff at the office right now, 16 of them are what you call State Council 1. That is the entry-level position for attorneys in that department. 16 State Council 1 who joined the department last year, so they don't even have a full year of experience. That is more than 25% of the staff complement of that office. I didn't hear anybody at the symposium talk about that. I did not hear anybody at the symposium talk about the need for increased training for our prosecutors so that we could raise our conviction rate. I did not hear anybody at the symposium talk about, increasing our capacity to quickly and speedily get better evidence before the court in terms of forensics and so on. The director raised the issue yesterday that he said when he started as a prosecutor some odd 30 years ago, he was seeing far more files coming forward with fingerprint evidence than he is now. He said he could go a whole year sometimes and only 2 or 3 files coming to him for home invasions and robberies and so on, where the police are detecting fingerprints. He said, so people coming into your home robbing, nobody wearing gloves or nothing, they're touching up the chest of drawers. That's exactly what he said. They're touching up the chest of drawers, but the police not coming to say, well, look, we have fingerprint evidence linking this person to the crime. And he himself said that those things will help raise our conviction rate. Where is the symposium for us to discuss those things?
Well, Senator, the resolution is for all intents and purposes a list, right? The list does not necessarily seem to be well organized. It's just a list of items for the most part. Now, technically, there is one item that speaks to education, doesn't go into much detail. There is one item that speaks to forensics, that it basically just says we will improve forensics and improve collaboration between nation states. So it's on the surface, because I do believe the people who are involved in that field in the region, they have their own conferences for their own field of study. They have been clamoring for. My thing is, they've included it in a line item on a list of many things. And I do wonder to what extent, what is the priorities? What is the plan coming out of this? What are the details? Or was it just, well, we'll put the wish list together of all the things that sound good and we'll throw it to the wall and then we'll see what sticks?
Well, that's, and again, I'll refer to something that the DGP said yesterday when questioned about legislation. He said legislation is only as good as your implementation. And I would say the same thing. The list is only as good as how well people intend to implement it. The list will look nice, sound nice, get media attention. And let's get back to forensics. This week, I saw the Minister of National Security again in a little, forum or whatever it is, had the media there talking about the new Forensic Science Center. And I said, well, why does this all sound so familiar? And I went back in the news, and 2018, we talk about the Forensic Science Center. 2019, Minister at the time, Stuart Young, said $10 million was secured from the Chinese to build this new Forensic Center. 2020, 2021, 2022, I think I asked a question in Parliament where they said that 16,000 samples were awaiting testing. I asked them how many samples for DNA was sent away for testing. The answer, I think, was 0. None. Nothing.
Well,
so when you have a list, and you come now this year to put it on a list about increased forensics, when for the last 5 years you've been talking about a new Forensic Science Center to alleviate the problems there, and you haven't done anything, how is the list going to help you? Is it making the list going to help you implement these things that we've been talking about for the last 5 years?
Well, Senator, before we run out of time, we also, with regards to the comments on bail, I find that interesting because it seems that's one of the things that a lot of the heads of CARICOM spoke about. It sounded a lot like what we've heard before and what you hear just in TNT's public discourse with regards to we should lock them up, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that. And some of the heads of CARICOM were basically saying, why do we have bail for murder? I think it's something that we could debate, but it does potentially lead us down a very tricky path where individual freedoms might start to get, infringed upon for the sake of...
Yeah, let's look at, let me tell you one thing about politicians. And that's why I've tried to remind people, I'm not a politician, I'm a lawyer. Politicians find any way to deflect from taking responsibility. That's been my experience, especially when they're in office. When in opposition, they tend to, and maybe that's a criticism I will take, when you're in opposition, you have all the answers. And, I remember Prime Minister Rowley, when he was opposition leader, having a host of solutions for crime, which none of which have seemed to be able to help him in the last 8 years. But anyway, when they are in office, they tend to find, and that's the other interesting thing I found on this whole symposium, on a whole 2 days, the amount of blame. I hear that they blame parents, they blame judges and magistrates, they blame everybody. But I have not yet heard any single leader of any Caribbean country step up and say, you know what, perhaps we have not been sensible enough in our resource allocation. We have to do better at this. We have to do better at that. I've heard so much blame being shared out there towards everybody else who didn't have a voice perhaps at that conference. But anyway, the issue of bail and the concept of this is not how it was done, and I remember, and this is foolish, and you have to be living on Mars to do it, and it's defense attorneys controlling court. That is what you call propaganda. That's propaganda, and that is just old talk. And there's no, I would have loved at something called a symposium, which is supposed to be an academic type discussion, for somebody to bring a case study and show me where the fact that people could now get bail for murder has somehow increased the amount of murders being committed or has contributed to that. I would love what a case.
Sorry, we're more or less out of time, and I apologize.
But that's a good point there at the end.
Cut you there, but I have to ask you very quickly, 30 seconds or less. Do you choose when to be a politician versus when to be a lawyer?
No, I don't actually. I think that I would very much all of my political comments, and even as a member of Parliament, are rooted in my belief in the rule of law, and are rooted in my belief that people, regardless of what situation they find themselves in, even if they are accused of a crime, still have certain fundamental rights and freedoms, which should be upheld and respected by the state. And that's my legal, political, moral state of affairs, and I don't bend or from it.
So perhaps a lawyer with the cloak of a politician, then.
Sorry?
A lawyer with the cloak of a politician.
I would say a lawyer trying to make a difference in the political landscape and introduce some more rooted and grounded contributions into the political conversation.
All right, Senator, well, thank you very much for your time this morning. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Keep well.
Have a good day.